want to talk a little bit about the feeding of the 5,000. And I want to begin with what may seem like an unusual question. And I think that most of us have a familiarity with the feeding of the 5,000. By the way, is that the only time that Jesus fed a multitude of people? No. He also fed a group of 4,000. And when I say 5,000, what am I referring to? Men. So we really don't know what the entire group may have been made up of. You know probably the facts of the matter, but I still want to look at the wording because the wording is going to be different in Luke's account than what we find in John's account. And that's not because there actually is some real differences that would cause us to be skeptical of what took place, but just that these are two different writers, and they approach some things a little bit differently. But in Luke chapter 9, and let's come down beginning with verse 12. It says, "Now the day began to wear away, and the 12 came and said to him, 'Send the crowd away to go into the surrounding villages and countryside to find lodging and get provisions, for we are here in a desolate place.' But he said to them, 'You give them something to eat.' They said, 'We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we are to go and buy food for all these people,' for there were about 5,000 men." I believe there's kind of a difference between this miracle and other miracles that we read Jesus performing in the gospel accounts. Does this seem different in any way to you than other times when he healed, when he worked miracles? Anything different at all? So many people, okay. Huge multitude, not just doing this for a few people or for one individual, but for a great many people. What would you say about the severity of the situation, comparing this with other miracles? What kind of miracles did Jesus perform? What did he do? A lot of healing, a lot of restoration of sight, restoration of hearing, casting out of demons, even raising the dead. Even raising the dead.
I was going to say this didn't involve the recipient's display of belief.
Okay. Yeah. Very good observation.
It was kind of
Yeah.
a mercy.
Yeah. Okay. And so in this case and in all the other gospel accounts, and by the way, this is the only miracle that Jesus performed that is found in all 4 gospels. It's the only one that's found in all 4. And maybe that says something to us about it. And we're going to notice something about that. So the severity is what I asked before Scott's good comment. What would you say about the severity of the situation?
Not very.
Huh?
Not very.
Not very?
It's a dire situation.
Okay, what's going on here? Why does he show compassion? There's no food. They're hungry. Now, in the feeding of the 4,000, I believe that it says in that text, in Matthew's account, that the people had been with him for 3 days. And it was a desolate place. And he had compassion on them. So, do you think that this is a dire kind of situation? What does it say to you about Jesus? Anything? Does it say anything to you about Jesus? He's compassionate, even to the extent that I think it's mentioned in one of the accounts, or else it's the account of the 4,000, that he was afraid some might grow faint if they had to travel a long distance. So he's going to feed them. And how well fed were they? Huh? They were satisfied. They were satisfied. I've often wondered if there were ever fish or loaves that tasted any better than what they ate on that occasion. And did they just barely have enough food? They gathered up 12 baskets of food. Okay. But we're talking about something for the multitude as a whole. Now turn with me, if you would, over to John chapter 6, because I think there's some interesting things here for us to notice. At the beginning of John 6, you have John's version of, inspired version, don't misunderstand my words there, his version of the feeding. But then as you come down, and it differs a little bit, you have Philip saying, wow, would 200 denarii even be enough? That'd be 200 days worth of wages. But he says, would that be enough to feed this crowd, you know? And so anyway, as you come down to verse 12 in John 6, it says, and when they had eaten their fill, he told his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments, that nothing may be lost. Maybe there's something there. So they gathered them up, and they filled 12 baskets with fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those that had eaten. Now notice what it says in verse 14 and 15. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they said, this is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world. This is that promised prophet from Deuteronomy 18, I assume that we're talking about. This is that prophet. And then notice what it says in verse 15. Perceiving then that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, Jesus withdrew again to the mountain by himself. So, when it says perceived, you think that's like you and I maybe having a wild thought that, oh, this might be about to happen? Or do you think we're talking about another level of perception? And some of you may have something different in your translation rather than the word perceive there.
That means, to me, it means you could understand what was in their mind without them saying.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. But he goes off by himself to pray. Now, here's an interesting thing that happens. And I know many of you could tell me what's going to take place. But Jesus goes and he prays. But what happens to Jesus and his disciples and to those that ate? What happens? The disciples do what? They get into a boat and they go across the Sea of Galilee. But Jesus is not with them in the boat. Jesus does what? He walks on the water. And he comes to the boat. And this is the occasion when Peter says what? Bid me come to you. And so Peter is going to do that. So the crowd they saw the disciples leave. They didn't see Jesus leave. But what did they do? They got in boats and they went across the Sea of Galilee and they found Jesus there. And what do they say to Jesus? How'd you get here? You know, how is this possible that you're here? Now, very critical aspect to this. I want to come down beginning with verse 25 of John 6. When they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, Rabbi, when did you come here? Jesus answered them, truly, truly, I say to you, You are seeking me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Here's the explanation for why you've gone to all this trouble to get in the boats, to come over here and to find me. It's because you ate. I fed you and you ate. And he says, do not work for the food that perishes, but for the food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give to you. For on him God the Father has set his seal. What kind of indictment is this for, I'm going to assume, the majority of these people? What kind of an indictment is this of them? They're looking at the physical. What do you think? And there's going to be a discussion as you go further in the chapter, and they say, well, what do we need to do? And he says, well, you need to believe. And they said, well, what will you do that we may believe? And they gave a suggestion. And what was their suggestion, basically? Why don't you do what Moses did? They've already said, you're a prophet, like the one that's going to be like Moses. What did Moses do for? Oh, he fed us. He fed us. Through him, we received the manna that God gave to our fathers. And so that might be a good thing. So here is the beginning of a important sermon that Jesus presents about him being the true bread of life and our needing that bread and not bread for the stomach. Let me ask you, do you think we need that kind of teaching today at all? Do you think that sometimes we're seeking him for the wrong reason and that maybe it's some physical blessings? Or I see some head shaking, yes. Anybody want to talk about it? Anybody want? Do you think this is the case? Barry, do you think this is the case?
Yes. You know, we generally have fairly materialistic lives, even among we believers. It's astounding the wealth that we have and the focus that we have on earthly things.
Yeah. It's a shame that we have such a focus, such an intense focus on worldly things. Can that still be a genuine faith? I mean, but is it going to do you any good? Is that kind of faith going to do you any good? Yes, sir.
I think there's remnants to that. When you brought up the word perceived earlier,
Yeah.
he kind of knew what their hearts were and what they were driven towards, because I also think it's symbolic that he actually gave them food, knowing that it really was of no benefit to what he was his purpose there. But even in our own lives, he gives us things like our jobs and our vehicles. I do think those things are part of still. But I think ultimately, like you're saying, he was seeking something greater, from them and even us.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. God knows our needs. He knows that we need bread. Give us this day our daily bread. Is that a prayer that it's okay for us to offer up? What is that prayer signifying when we pray that? Give us this day our daily bread.
That we have faith that he's going to supply our needs.
Yes. That we're looking to him as the one that ultimately supplies those needs. And Jesus did feel compassion, the text says, that they, didn't have something to eat. All right, any other comments about this? I don't want to spend the whole hour on this, but any other comments? Yes.
There's nothing wrong with, we are so richly blessed, blessings when we do not share those blessings. Like if we have this wonderful home and no one is ever in it, we're not sharing it with people, we're not offering it as a place to stay or a meal to provide or any of those things, then like we're taking these blessings and keeping them completely for ourselves. We see Jesus, my guess is like this is the food the disciples had to eat for themselves, and Jesus said like, let's give it to everybody else. Like we have this thing, let's share it. So it's not just like, there's so much more that we probably don't even need, but also when you're not sharing what you do have with community, with anything like that, then like,
Yeah.
you're saying like, thanks, this is for me.
Yeah.
Need it for others.
I appreciate you bringing out the points that we are so richly blessed. What are we doing with those blessings? Are we sharing those blessings? Are we sharing our homes and our hospitality with others? And by the way, we won't get into it, but who does Jesus say we should emphasize in sharing our blessings with? Those who are in need. Yeah. Terry?
I had not thought about this for a while, and so I had to look it up. And that is a theory, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Oh, okay.
And the very bottom of that pyramid are physiological needs.
Yeah.
And you can't fulfill the other needs until the very basic ones.
Okay.
And what Sarah was talking about, the sharing with other people, that's like 2 or 3 more steps up
Yeah.
that pyramid.
Yeah.
There's other things that we've got to either get right in our mind or our bodies
Yeah.
in order to do that. And that's what a lot of Jesus' miracles address, are people's physiological needs.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. That we need to be thoughtful. It doesn't do us any good to pass out pamphlets and do all of those things if we are just oblivious to other obvious needs that we might see that they have. And that's a lesson for all of us all the time, I think. You know, we get distracted and we get used to ways what becomes too customary to us in our offering of hospitality, for instance. How would you rate our congregation hospitality-wise? I'm not asking for, but I am asking. Important things to think about. So the food came from a boy's lunch, basically. He had, and I can't see a boy walking around with a big, some boys would like to walk around with a lunch that big, but I don't see these as being, you know, huge loaves and fishes that Jesus is dividing. Okay, any comments, anything here? Brian, you got a thought about anything?
I think we need to remember our situation's changing. Thank God our Father. Kids want more and more and more.
Yep.
Children have a perspective. But we tend to remain that way in some ways. We're blessed with certain things, so we would like more.
Yeah.
People that are rich often want more riches. And we're taught about this.
Yeah.
And Jesus gives to them, but then there's not a limit necessarily, but he makes clear that this is at the end of the matter. You shouldn't just care about the material. Think about the spiritual.
Yeah.
I gave to you because you need it.
Yep.
What you really need
Yep.
is the spiritual.
That's right.
So, but we have a hard time getting away from
We do. We have a very hard time with it. We struggle with it. And we always kind of think if I had just a little bit more, I'd be set. And we're not satisfied with where we're at right now.
And I think the Lord knows we struggle with it. I mean, he taught the same lesson again in the latter part of John, where he fed the disciples, had them cast over their nets, gave them food, and then he said, "Are you full? And do you love me? Feed my sheep." So the more important thing was not, is your belly full from the bursting nets that you have, but
Yeah.
your role is to feed my sheep. I just fed you.
Yeah. And I appreciate the point. It's not wrong for us to have things. But Paul in 1 Timothy 6 is one of those passages that teaches the responsibility of those that are blessed. How many of us are blessed? Well, maybe every hand nearly should go up, you know. Delange, do you have a point?
Maybe you could address, just to tag on to Brian's point about, unfortunately, we continue to do this as adults, and going back to the point that initially maybe you were bringing up is that, we can perceive that we need something, and if it's not fulfilled, and we are not given it by God, then our temperament perhaps is to say, but Lord, I've done all this, and I've tried to be what you want me to be, and now because I don't have this, I feel that he's failing me. And, maybe
Yeah.
you could address that.
No, I think that's a good point. I do think a lot of people, unfortunately, perceive how they're doing materialistically, with their finances, with their possessions, and they wonder, is there a relationship between how I'm doing and how God is looking upon me and what he thinks of me? And so if I'm struggling, there may be some people that say, Lord, what am I doing wrong? I thought I've been serving you. I thought I've been doing this. Why am I still having problems? Why do I have sickness? Why have I lost my job? You know, why are these things happening? And we think that God, he is looking down at us and that he's kind of divvying out what we feel that we're, or what he feels that we're worth. That's not the case. That's not the case. Yeah, Barry?
A larger temptation is seeing those who have no belief and who actually practice evil doing better than we are.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's something that deserves a lot of thought. Okay, yeah, Mickey?
What we've said about having so much of this world's goods and sharing with others, that's critical.
Yeah,
And certainly that's a part of what we will face in judgment.
yep,
And the judgment scene in Matthew 25, Jesus said, I was hungry, and you didn't feed me.
Yeah.
I was thirsty,
yep,
and you didn't give me anything to drink. I was sick, and you didn't visit me. I was in prison, and you didn't do anything. All of those things are critical needs. They're not just social aspects of
yeah,
life.
yeah, yeah,
Those were critical needs.
Yeah.
And people did not respond. And consequently, he said, depart from it.
yeah,
So there is that. But the emphasis, as Brian pointed out of John 6, and the text of Luke 9, have to do with identifying, who Jesus is. And that's the critical thing, the miracle that he performed.
yeah, yeah,
To prove who he is. He is that prophet. And you'll notice in verse 14, as you noted, when therefore the people saw the sign which he did. Now, they've affirmed this is that prophet, but how soon they forgot.
yeah,
Their focus is not on him being the prophet, not on the spiritual things that he can provide for them, but their focus is simply on that which is material.
Yep.
And so they find him the next day, they want another free meal.
yep,
He wouldn't give them.
yep. No, and James and in 1 John, it mentions that when we see people in need and we have the attitude of, well, go and be filled, you know, and we think, well, I do care about them. I wish them well, you know, but what have we done? I've been offended. I've got to be careful how I say this. What do you think happens when you're a preacher and you have an office at the building? Got any clues about what happens during the days that you're studying?
You don't know.
Yeah, we do. We know.
People show up and
People show up
ask, and
and they need stuff.
you never know whether it's genuine or not.
And I started to say I resent. Maybe that's too strong a word. But these people that have printed up a list to give to the people that come to the door. Well, here's where you could get a meal. Here's where you could get a night's rest. Here's where these are these benevolent situations. That bothers me. That bothers me. We better move on. We better move on. All right, so Jesus asked his apostles, he said, "Who do men say that I am?" They said, "Well, they say you might be John the Baptist." John the Baptist was dead at this point. They said, "You might be one of the prophets." And he then asked, "But who do you say that I am?" Why would he care what the opinion of his apostles were about his identity? Why would that make a difference?
Because they'll be sharing the message once he's gone.
All right. They had a familiarity with him, didn't they, that others didn't have. They knew him from first thing in the morning to last thing at night. They knew him. And Peter speaks up and he says what? Yeah, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And what did Jesus say to his apostles about this matter? That they should what? Go out and tell everybody? No. Be quiet about it and don't tell others about it. I'm going to go through some of these points fairly quickly. What did Jesus begin to reveal at this time about himself and his future? Say again? That he was going to suffer. Yeah, that he was going to suffer and die and be raised is what he will. There'll be at least 3 occasions when he will say this to his apostles. And they understood completely, right? No. They didn't get it. They didn't understand what was going to happen. And maybe in some ways there was a purpose for that, for them not understanding that well at this time. When Jesus went up on the Mount of Transfiguration, who did he take with him? Okay, the inner, most closest group, James and John and Peter. And what is the significance of what happened on the Mount of Transfiguration, do you think? What are the major takeaways that you would bring up to somebody about what happened on the Mount?
He distinguishes himself from Moses representing the old law and Elijah representing the prophet. So it says, you may have listened to them, but now you need to listen to me.
Yeah, you got it, but you're just a twist off. Who says this about Jesus? Himself? The Father, the voice from the cloud, says, "This is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. Hear ye him." But any kind of significance you should give to the transfiguration itself, to his being changed before them and his appearance before them, you think that's significant at all? He's not another man. He's not just another man. This whole vision and seeing Elijah and seeing Moses with him and speaking to him. And what were they speaking about, by the way? His departure. What was going to happen to him? Keith, did you have a comment, or am I anticipating?
No. I was just going to say, well, these Moses and Elijah represented the Old
Yes.
prophets, but they were also men who went up on mountains and saw God.
Yeah.
But they didn't see the glory of God. They saw the glory of God. They were not able to work on God. And I think it is, you're telling me, why is it important that Jesus was changed? Because he wasn't just seeing the backside of
Yeah.
the glory of God and those types of things that they saw. He was God.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's an excellent point. thinking about the experience of Moses and Elijah. But there's a distinction. We're not going to build 3 tabernacles here to honor all 3. We are to listen to Jesus. He's the one that deserves our attention. I know I'm missing tons of stuff here. Any comments at all? Anything? Yeah.
Yeah, and I know we're on time, but.
You're good. You're good.
Luke 9:23 and, I mean, through 25 is some of the most important things that Jesus tells like anyone at any point. You know, we're
Yeah.
told what we need to do to follow him. You know, we hear, believe, repent, confess, be baptized. This is the after. Like, this is what your life is now. It is you deny yourself, you take up your cross daily, and you follow Jesus. And I think it's important that he says these things like you lose your life to gain it. And then it says in 8 days after he says these things, that's when the transfiguration comes. Like, he's really saying, like, the life that you choose is valuable. Like, you're going to lose things, but you're going to gain so much more. And it's going to be a daily choice to do what I've done and live the life that I've set out and set the example for. And I think that's just so powerful.
Yeah, and in fact, there's several things that he says about discipleship in this section, in chapter 9 and chapter 10. But yeah, if we don't understand what it means to be a disciple, wow, we need to go back and start with our ABCs all over again and what that really means. What did the disciples argue about in chapter 9 and verse 46? How sad it is to see this. What do they argue about?
Who's the greatest?
Yeah. And they did that during the very week that he'd be crucified as well. Unbelievable that they would do this. And in Matthew's account, you have Jesus taking a little child and putting him in their midst. And he says, unless you become like a little child, you can't be part of my kingdom. Unless you humble yourself like a little child, you can't be my servant. So much attention given on greatness. We want to see ourselves lifted up and elevated, brethren. We want for people to think highly of us. We want to suppose that we're important. I don't know that there's anything more dangerous to our soul than that aspiration. Anything that ruins what we do, more than this feeling, these aspirations of greatness. Let's go on over to chapter 10 real quickly here. There's the sending out of the 72. There's been the sending out of the apostles, of the 12. They come back. They tell what happened. How about the 72? What did they bring back? What news did they carry to Jesus? It was great, wasn't it?
I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven.
Yeah. Wow. How extraordinary that they could say these things. Of course, I wasn't here last week to enjoy Brian's class, but what does it say to you about Jesus sending out the 12 and then him sending out the 72 now? What is God concerned about with his people Israel? What does he want? It's the same thing that John the Baptist preached and that Jesus started preaching. The kingdom is at hand. It's at hand. And they weren't to waste their time, were they, in these places? They were to accept the hospitality if it was offered, if it was given to them. But they had a task at hand. All right. The last part of the chapter talks about wonderful parable of the Good Samaritan. And it comes up because of a question that's asked by a lawyer. And what does the lawyer ask Jesus?
Who is my neighbor?
Yeah, that's what he's going to get hung up on, is who is my neighbor. But he says, what's the most important law. And Jesus says, well, how do you figure it? What do you think? And he said, well, love your neighbor as your, to love the Lord with all your heart and to love your neighbor as yourself. But then that's when he says, but who's my neighbor? Who is this that I'm supposed to love? I'm commanded to love him, but who is he? Who is he? And what is the answer basically that Jesus gives, do you think? Anybody that you see that needs help, that needs assistance, that is suffering, that has been mistreated, they're your neighbor. You mean it's not just the folks that live in the next 2 houses or across the street or the brethren? No, it's wider than that. Yes?
I know we pressed on time.
No.
The question that the lawyer initially asked in verse 25 is, what shall I do to inherit eternal
Okay,
life?
yes.
What an important question.
Yeah.
Who does he bring it to? The most important question to the most important teacher.
Yes.
Jesus is qualified to answer the question. And when Jesus answered it, he didn't just tell him. He said, what do you read?
Yeah.
That's a good way to teach somebody.
Yeah.
Read this.
Yeah.
And he responded appropriately.
Okay. Yeah, excellent point. Good point. That the question was not what's the most important commandment here. That's in another text. But what must I do? And I hope the man was sincere to some extent, but he may have been trying to do what so many did, trying to get Jesus in a discussion he couldn't win. Jim?
The man's question was, who is my neighbor?
Yeah, yeah.
But what Jesus answered with was how he should be the neighbor. He was not really answering, giving him names, or he gave a description, go ahead and help those who need it. But the answer he was giving was, this is how you become a neighbor.
Yeah, all right, yeah, by doing what the Samaritan did. Yeah, that's the way that you show that you're a neighbor. All right, kind of rush through, but Brian's going to catch us up next week, and everything is going to go smooth for the rest of this class. There is so much great material, and I hope that you're studying these things and reading these things. John said that if all the things that Jesus did were written, the world couldn't contain the books. Now, he was exaggerating, I guess, I suppose, but maybe not, because when you read through the Gospels, you see all of these different points that you would say, wow. All right, thank you for your attention this morning.